Hi, everybody. I'm Michael Prentke, and this is the Boss Bones podcast. And today I'm super, super excited to have Bill Lowe. And I've been trying really hard to get him. I think I tried reaching out in the first season, but I failed. I was not able to reach you. And here we are. I finally got you here, and I'm really excited to have you. So welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being here.
All right. Glad to be here. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So my first exposure to you and your playing was through the Makanda Project, and when I was at NEC for undergrad, I used to see you all rehearsing at NEC. I
Right.
think it was every Friday afternoon. You would
Yep.
all come up, um, and I saw you all coming in, and it was only a while later that I finally saw a full performance, not just rehearsal, but saw
Mhm.
Makanda play. I think at the library in Dudley Square or something.
Right. That's our home. That's our home base. Yeah.
And it was a very special performance. It was a very special vibe. It despite I didn't know a lot about the project, but it seems like there's a lot of history and a lot of um, kind of cultural relevance to Makanda, Ken McIntyre,
Mhm.
as well as the players who are in the group. I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about your experience with that whole project.
Sure. Sure. Yes, it is a special. It is a special project. Let's see. I knew Makanda, uh, worked with him back when I lived in New York and in Connecticut, long before I came to Boston. Um, as it turns out, John Kordeleski, the leader of the Makanda Project here in Boston, started out as a student of Makanda's, and then they became colleagues. They worked together. And when Makanda passed, um, John and his widow, his widow asked John to help her, go through his papers and music and so forth. And what they discovered was literally hundreds of compositions that had not seen the light of day, just pieces of paper stacked very neatly with compositions that Makanda had written. It was very interesting, as you can tell when you hear, very interesting composer, and very much a product of his times. And I'll get back to that, what I mean by that in a minute. So anyway, John then got the idea to perform some of these pieces, and he and Curtis Rivers just started out just playing when Curtis was alto player. He and Curtis just, Curtis would come over to John's house and they play through these tunes. And then it became an arranging project for John. He started arranging the tunes, first for a small group, 4 or 5, and then for what has become the Makanda Project, which is basically a big band, a small big band, 11 to 13 pieces, depending. Um, and there were a couple decisions that John made that I think are really important, and I like them a lot. One of them was, particularly since he was a student and a colleague of Makanda's, he could have chosen to make the band a Makanda revival kind of band. What I like about John is not at all trying to write arrangements that sound like Makanda Ken McIntyre's arrangement. First of all, why would you do that? Makanda's been here and gone. But the tunes themselves, the compositions themselves, are Makanda's compositions, and with very quirky rhythmic and harmonic movements. And John is absolutely true to those. He's true to what the lead sheets offer, and he makes, um, I think, very interesting arrangements of this music for this band. That's the point. He's not making it for Makanda. Makanda is not here in physical form. He's making these arrangements for us. So, and his arranging, this has been going on for like 10 years now. So his arranging uh, abilities have grown tremendously over time. And so that was one very important decision John made. And another very important decision John made was to, as much as possible, um, honor the community that Makanda came from. Everybody in the band, plays around in Boston and in New York and elsewhere. So, but it's important that the band is located. Makanda Project's home base is the Dudley Square, now Nubian Square branch of the Boston Public Library. That's our home. And over the years, we built up a very wonderful following. So the idea is to have the music rooted in the community where the musician grew up, which doesn't often happen. It's one of the kind of funky things about our business, that the music comes very often, the composers particularly come from basically African American communities, and when the music is performed, it's performed every place but there. So not to put that, it's always great to go to Europe. The band's going to Austria in August, and that's great to play at a festival and a club date with Chico Freeman. I mean, that's great. And we played in New York and we played in Hartford. We play out, and our home base is Dorchester, Roxbury. So we have a series in the fall, once a month, a monthly series in the fall and winter, and a monthly series in the summer. Both of those series take place in the community in Roxbury. So the summer is outside at the First Church of Roxbury on Putnam Square, 10 Putnam Street, Elliott Square, sorry. And then the winter venue has been or had been the public library. The public library, the Dudley Square, Nubian Square Public Library is still being renovated. So we moved across the street to the to the bowling building, and I think it's kind of ironic that we perform there, the bowling building on the second floor, in the big room that's reserved to be the home of the Boston School Committee. That's kind of crazy. So that's the project. It's multi-generational. That's important to us. That's very important to us because Ken was about that. Ken was about using his ensembles as ways of sharing the music with younger folks, younger musicians, just as that happened to him. And I'm very much about that. So it's good for me to sit next to someone like yourself, who's there subbing for somebody else. That's important because that's how I learned. I always remember being a high school student in the summer, working out with this local big band in Trenton, New Jersey, and sitting next to the cats from Trenton. I mean, that's how you learn. There's less and less of that as the music gets taught in schools and universities. There's an interesting, I'll call them contradictions that have to be dealt with. I'm not against the music being taught in university. In fact, I made a career of that. So I'm not against that. And there are aspects of what the music must be about that you don't get at a university, and you have to make that happen. And so the Makanda Project is a way of one way of doing that. The music is is home based in Ken McIntyre's where he grew up, and the music wherever possible, whenever possible, is shared with that community. So I'm very pleased with that. That's one of the two major, well, three major projects that I've been involved with since I've been living in Boston since, goodness, 1990. Wow. The other two being, of course, my own groups, various Bill Lowe ensembles. I have a compositional project called Signifying Natives, which I'm not going to talk about today, but a lot of my music is done through that. I'm just just got off the phone with one of my collaborators. We're trying to set up a mini tour in November for some of the signifying native stuff.
Congrats.
Yeah, thank you. And the other major Boston project for me, up until 2 years ago, has been the John Coltrane Memorial Concert. My colleague Leonard Brown passed away a couple years ago. We've done one Coltrane concert after Leonard's passing. I assume there's going to be something in the fall, but I don't know for sure. So, but for many years, I worked with that project, helped Leonard as much as I could to produce those concerts. You know, they were once a year, and then we branched out. We had we put together the John Coltrane outreach program, which was taking the music from the Coltrane concert, smaller groups, into various public schools here in town. So, as you can see, a lot of what I do is about the making of music and making it where the people grew up making music. I don't know any other way of saying that. And to be a part directly of educational institutions. It's not either or, it's and. There's nothing else. I've learned that. I just had my 75th birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. The older I get, the more I know how much I don't know. And it's true. That's so true. And the more I know that the music is so important to our lives. This recent test that we're all still experiencing. Some people call it a pandemic. But the recent test that we're all going through reminds me, and I think hopefully will remind everybody else, that we are a planet of one people, and that and we have a lot of negative stuff. And I'm of the opinion that elders, and particularly elders who are teachers, have a responsibility to help younger people devise a language, a way of talking about the negative stuff that got us where we are right now, and talk about it in a positive way. See? So this whole notion of fighting about, what's it called, race theory. I mean, it's not a new theory. That's what's up. We got to tell.
You're talking about the critical race theory.
Yeah, the critical race theory debate is such a silly debate, which is what it's about. We all do have the elders who have the responsibility of teaching all young folks a language, a way of dealing with, in a positive way, with the negative stuff that got us here. And the beginning of that is to acknowledge the negative stuff. We know it's here. We see the results. It's clear. And to acknowledge it and then move on. It's not even about, ooh, you made us slaves. Well, yeah, some people did. And we need to acknowledge that and figure out how not to do that again, how not to continue with the disparities. The music is absolutely crucial to that effort, because I find it so interesting. I always tell my students that it's amazing the way that a music that comes from an enslaved people has become a language that's known around the world. And for many places in the world, the definition of America is the music, is our music. So the music that comes from slaves and descendants of slaves becomes the epitome of what this experiment, like they like to say on television these days, the American experiment is really all about. And I think that's very true. And that's very complicated. And that's it's also very joyful. The blues the blues is about sadness, and the blues is about joy at exactly the same time. Those are the things that guide me making music. And I've learned that from the many many folks who have been my teachers. Uh, and they were my teachers by virtue of the fact that I served them in their band. So the
Mm.
35 plus years that I spent with the Frank Foster Big Band and the many years I spent with the Jackie Byard Big Band in New York, the many years I spent with the Bill Barron Big Band, um, you know, the week that I sat in as a sub with the Thad and Mel Band in New York, going on tour for 3 weeks, no, 6 weeks with the Clark Terry Big Band. That's where you learn the music. And I've been
Mm.
very fortunate over the years that I got to work with those giants. And any success that I have to attribute to that work because it taught me a lot. I'll shut up now. You got to remember, I'm the firstborn grandson of a South Carolina rural preacher. So once you get me starting to talk, you have to shut me up because
I'm
that's
I'm
how preachers are.
I'm loving this. I love hearing everything that you're saying. This is amazing. I'm very grateful to hear
So
everything.
thank you.
So what brought you to Boston? It sounds like you were pretty active in Trenton, New Jersey, from central northern New Jersey and New York. Why
Right.
Boston?
Okay. I lived in New York. Uh, well, I was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I grew up as a child going back and forth between Trenton, New Jersey, and Bamberg, South Carolina, where I lived with my mother's people. So, back and forth. That was back in the 50s when uh, that was often the case for working class African American families, where children, particularly the older children, would spend a whole year, living with the grandparents in the South while the parents, while your parents in the North were getting the eggs and bacon together. It wasn't easy. So uh, I grew up with those two. I had a double vision of what America was about. So in the 50s, um, I was living in Trenton, New Jersey with my parents, both of my parents and my siblings. And for part of a good part of the time. And then another good part of the time, I would live in Bamberg, South Carolina. South Carolina in the 50s was seriously segregated. I remember I once got in trouble because I didn't say thank you in the proper way to a white store owner. And by the time I got home, he had called my grandmother and I. We were supposed to be in a lot of trouble. For me, I wasn't even trying to disrespect him. I just said thanks, and I was supposed to say something else, something much more obsequious. Learned a lot of lessons there. My grandfather, uh, Reverend C.D. Dowling, was a Baptist preacher, uh, rural Baptist preacher, as I said. He had 4 churches, one for each Sunday, different church. He was also a carpenter, which is kind of interesting to have a Christian
Hmm.
grandfather who's a carpenter. And then my grandmother, uh, his wife, Hattie Dowling, Nana, Nana and her eldest daughter, my aunt Emma, gave me the most important gift I've ever gotten. They gave me the gift of language. They gave me the gift of reading. They taught me to read at a very young age. Because Nana used to say, son, I learn to read because they can never take that away from me.
Hmm.
I knew, even though I was 6 or 7 years old, I knew exactly what she was talking about. There was no
Hmm.
question I had to say, Granny, what you mean? No, I got it. I got it. So I learned to read early on from my grandmother and my aunt. Um, Part of my job, whenever I lived down there, was to read biblical verses before meals because they were about that. So the youngest, that was me at the time in the house. It was my responsibility to particularly on Sunday, to choose biblical passages and read them. Tried to get cute once and spent a lot of time looking for the shortest verse I could find in the Christian Bible. And the shortest verse is Jesus wept. Turns out it's 2 words. And I read that, and Nana said, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So next time I read a very long I got the message. There are important lessons. I learned lessons about music there. I found out much later that I knew my grandfather played fiddle because he would sometimes play it in church. What I didn't know was that I found out later on that he, in fact, had played a little trombone. But at the time, when I started playing trombone in Trenton, New Jersey, when I was in the 7th grade. And once I got into that, I found out that my father had played trombone, which I hadn't known. I knew him as a guitarist. My father was a very successful guitarist in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which is where I was born. But once the house got over me making all that god-awful noise when I was first learning how to play, he let me know that he had played some trombone when he was in school. From my parents and from my grandparents, then I learned a lot of music and a lot of very important life lessons. My grandfather, Reverend Dowen, took his job as leader of his flock very seriously. He didn't just go in on Sundays and preach a hellified sermon, which he did. He always preached a hellified sermon. And he also took care of the people, helped them in lots of different ways. So I always saw that as that was a serious role model, as they say, that you have a responsibility to do something with your life other than just make yourself healthy, wealthy, and wise. You have to do all this stuff. So I, as I said, grew up in Bamberg and in Trenton, New Jersey. I started playing trombone in junior high school in Trenton. I graduated from high school in Trenton, New Jersey. I went on to college, first as an engineering student at Lehigh University. Then I changed to literature and history, American studies, they called them then, new thing then. Done graduate work. So I've very much been a part of the educational institutions. And so again, I've always seen that it's not a contradiction, it's somewhat of a tension between the music in these institutions and the music in never saw it as a bad thing, just as a tension. It's just different stuff. It's different ways of being. And it's important to understand the ways of being.
So, you never did tell me about the Boston piece, though.
Oh, well, so that's right. I moved to Boston. I was working, living in Middletown, Connecticut, raising a child, 2 children actually, in Middletown. And Middletown is called Middletown because it's midway between New York and Boston. And I was teaching at Wesleyan University with the great Bill Barron and Ed Blackwell, Fred Simmons, really great people. And working in both New York and Boston, and more, I worked in Boston. And after, 15 years, I guess it was, at Wesleyan, I reckoned it was time for a change. Bill Barron passed. Bill Barron died while I was still working there. Ed Blackwell died while I was still working there. So it was time for me to move on. And I had a couple of choices. And the choice I made, I guess it was the right one, was to come to Boston instead of going to San Francisco. Stanford. Anyway, came to Boston to work at Northeastern University, where my friend, Leonard Brown, I met Leonard at Wesleyan. Leonard came through Wesleyan when I was there as a teacher. He came through to do his doctorate in ethnomusicology, and that's how we got to know each other. I was on his doctoral committee and all that stuff. But we became friends. And musical colleagues. And so I began playing for the Coltrane concert while I still lived in Middletown. So Northeastern was going through an expansion at a particular time, and people suggested, and I took them up on it and moved to Boston, moved the family to Boston to work at Northeastern. So that's how that came about. And by the time I got here, I already had some, a lot of actually connections here musically in Boston because I come in and do stuff. So that's how I got to Boston, and immediately became, like I said, a co-producer of the Coltrane concert, and all that went with that, and worked with my own bands, my own music. Done some things that I've been very proud of, appreciative, and they've happened because of where I live. Because that's what you do. You take your environment and work with it.
So what was that like when you were here in Boston in the 90s and you were kind of a fairly newcomer, more or less,
Mm-hmm.
in town and trying to make some gigs and play with other musicians? What was that like for you?
It was basically fun because, that's really the case. I mean, I had known some musicians before, and then when I got here, I got to meet a lot more, and it was really just about hooking up with them, So, I got to do a lot of work, for example, with Frank Wilkins. How bad is that? You need a piano player, go get Frank Wilkins. Really? It's like that, huh?
Mm.
Um, the great Timmy Ingalls, who passed away. I always remember Timmy with his green electric bass. Just funk, for real. Um, Leonard, Billy Pierce, all the folks at Berkeley. Um,
Are you talking about Lenny Stallworth?
Somewhat, no, but I was saying Billy Pierce.
Oh, okay.
Billy Pierce, the tenor player. Those are the people who were directly connected through Leonard and the Coltrane concert, and
Oh, right.
those were, but they gave me possibilities to do other things. So I became aware and already known about the situation at Berkeley, at New England Conservatory, different kind of places doing. It's funny, I was always, before I came to Boston, both NEC, Black Music Program, and Jazz Studies at Berkeley, I kind of knew of from the other end, right? From New York and Middletown. So for example, one of the things that happened just in the course of institutional work, Bill Barron was asked to be part of accreditation process for Berkeley back in the 80s, I guess it was. So kind of help Bill with that. NEC was going through getting folks. They offered Frank Foster a gig, so I got to talk to him about that. And then Bill, the way I got to Middletown in the first place was that I was still living in New York. I used to come up to visit Bill Barron when he came to teach at Wesleyan. And then 2 years in, he asked me to come up and work with him. And that's ultimately how I got to Boston. After 15 years at Wesleyan, I wound up here. So yeah, it was fun. It was the same but different, right? There's a thing about, for jazz folks in general, about New York. New York is, and I always presented, again, not contradiction, but a kind of tension awareness about what was and was not available for musicians in New York.
What are you referring to when you say what was
Well,
available or not for
yeah,
musicians in New York?
I always say to my Boston colleagues, yeah, okay, New York is great. There's no question about it. There are a lot of great musicians there, and there are a lot of great musicians in Boston.
Hmm.
So there you are. Great musicians get together and make some music. That's really the deal. Um, and particularly for the younger musicians going to Berkeley, there's always this. Let me hurry up and learning, get this learning together, so I can go down to New York and become a musician. I'm always saying, well, you better become a musician before you go to New York. You better become a musician while you're learning to be a musician. Don't
Hmm.
see it as a stepping stone. Become a musician. You can go live wherever you want. You can go live in Iowa and make the music. You can go, there's a jazz scene in Chicago, very good one, by the way. There's a jazz scene in New Orleans. There's a jazz scene in San Francisco, Los Angeles, even in Trenton, New Jersey. Jazz
Hmm.
scenes everywhere. So yeah, New York is New York, and Boston is Boston. So I always say that. On the other hand, having come from New York, even though I've been here, 30 years, I still kind of feel like um, I'm somewhat of a visitor. I'm still not really. I miss New York sometimes whenever I go back. I haven't been back to New York in a long time because of the pandemic. And whenever I go, I feel like I'm back home for a minute. So so
Hmm.
much of what life is about is tensions, and it's important to not so much try to resolve them as to embrace them and
Hmm.
use them to do whatever it is you have to do.
Yeah. Um. What What was the scene like in the '90s? What were some of your favorite spots to play? Who were some of your favorite players around town? What was
Oh
going
well,
on then?
yeah, I mentioned Frank Wilkins, of course,
Hmm.
uh, Timmy Ingalls, Larry Rowland was still here, bassist, um, Ron Savage, drummer. Ron is now head of percussion in Berkeley, and he was just one of the cats. We're all trying to do it. Great players to work with, um, to make music with, of all different kinds. Instrumental, small groups, large bands. And I've always been a big band trombonist. So I had a couple projects of my own that required me to put a big band together to um, to record, try to record some of Bill Barron's big band music.
What about some venues? What were some of your favorite places to
Oh,
play?
the places, the places where everybody does. Right now, my mind is blanking because I'm thinking about what I have to do in the next half hour. But all there was the lily pad. I remember when that kind of got started. That was to play that to be involved in that part of the scene. That's another thing that I've always been about. Maybe it's because of my instrument. Maybe it's because of just who I am. Um, when I was in New York and here, there are always these supposedly different kinds of scenes, different musical, free folks, straight ahead folks, and all that. I tend to find places in all of those. Um, to me, I kind of like Louis Armstrong's definition. There's only two kinds of music: good music and bad music, and I prefer I prefer to play good music. Um, so there's a very active, what's referred to as the as the free scene. I've been a part of the Aardvark Jazz Orchestra for a long time. Mark, Mark Harvey. Mark just retired from MIT after 40 years of teaching there.
Hmm.
And his band, Aardvark, is one of the oldest continual bands in the country. I mean, it just is. Um, so there's that. I used to do some work with John Voight, bassist, um, Larry Rowland, and I played at the Regatta Bar. That's okay. It's not my favorite place to play, but that's okay. It's I guess that's my point. It's a place. And there are reasons that, from a musician's point of view, some of them were good and some of them were not so good, that the place exists. And so it has certain needs, and its needs aren't always the same as the musicians. Okay. You know that going in. I've played in New York at the Village Vanguard. Well, there are good things and bad things about the Village Vanguard. I've played at places that were really fronts for certain kinds of illegal activities. That's one of the realities of playing this music. Um, I don't think I've ever given an anti-crime lecture inside one of those places. A little smarter than that. But they're there, and you're working in it, and you have to figure out for yourself how you can represent what you do. I have a friend, very good friend, who's a beautiful musician, Hafez McGee. Just talked with Hafez a couple of days ago, and Hafez doesn't call his saxophone a saxophone anymore. He calls it a congaphone.
Wow.
Now, what that's about, as you know, the saxophone is an instrument. It's not that old in the history of the world, and it was invented by a Belgian man,
Mm-hmm.
Adolphe Sax, at the height of the Belgian Empire, which included absolute horrible treatment of the African slaves in the Belgian Congo. People
Yes.
talk about the Holocaust, which was a horrible thing. The numbers in the Holocaust and the numbers in the ways that the Belgians treated the Africans, those numbers are about the same. In fact, they're higher. There are more Africans just in the Belgian Congo, not the rest of the continent now, just in the Belgian Congo, than were slaughtered on purpose in the Holocaust. Mm-hmm. So Hafez, as a thinking human being, he has to deal with that. He's playing this instrument, and then, we talked about it. I mean, the saxophone is very important part of jazz history, and the invention of that, the wealth that allowed Mr. Sax to have the time to invent the saxophone, that wealth came on the backs of slaughtered Congo slaves.
Yes.
Now, there are a couple of things you can do with that once you discover that, and once you find that out, once your critical race theory gets you there. One of the things you can do is to stop playing the saxophone. If you feel that you have an affinity for what happened to these people, and you think it was a horrible thing, so you could stop playing the saxophone. Clearly, Hafez is not going to stop playing the saxophone, and it's what his life is about.
Mm-hmm.
And you can also choose to forget or to not acknowledge that connection. Mm-hmm. There's a third choice. And the third choice is to acknowledge that connection and to acknowledge that your involvement in the music with that implement of Western imperialism, that you are playing that damn thing. Just like I'm playing a trombone. I mean, if you want to talk about all of that, it's the same sets of things. The third way, I think, is the one that I think makes no sense. You don't ignore it, and you don't wallow in it, and you figure out how to go forward.
Sure.
Okay? And so one of the ways, just one of many ways that Hafez deals with that is he changed the name of the instrument, the congaphone. Fawn refers to the African name for the people in what we call the Congo and Congo. So it's, instead of a saxophone, it's a congaphone. That's funny, and it's also very serious. It's very funny and a very serious thing. My project that I mentioned earlier, the Signifying Natives, is like that. It's serious and funny. It's all about acknowledging the truth and acknowledging the truth that all of the messiness of being a human, particularly the messiness in so-called Western civilization, or any civilization. If you're a thinking person, if you're a caring person, then at a certain point, you have to come to grips with your participation in the negative stuff. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if you're for a serious approach to climate change, well, there you are with your car. Okay, it's not electric yet. It's using petrol. It's part of that petrol economy. It's messing up the atmosphere. So you're going to stop driving. You're not going to drive to work. You're not going to drive to the gig. You're going to sell your car. It's too expensive right now for everybody to have electric. So there are real issues that are everyday issues that are about enslavement.
Mm.
It's ultimately about enslavement, and it's something that we all participate in by definition, because we're born into the 21st century.
Mm-hmm.
And the question then becomes, how do you operate? What do you do? You can ignore it, or you can find some other way.
Mm.
That's my share today.
Thank you, Pastor.
You're
Pastor
welcome.
Lowe.
Bless you, my son.
Wow. That there really has been a sort of recurring theme, which is tensions,
Mhm.
sort of like simultaneous dichotomies or opposing things, or maybe seemingly opposing things, and how usually in a sort of binary, it feels like we want to choose one side or another side, but sometimes trying to find a middle way, trying to, yeah, thread this really odd and challenging needle. And you've sort of mentioned so many stories that have kind of a similar theme, whether it's, I don't know, growing up and being between the South and the North of
Mhm.
the, or whether it's being between Boston and New York and threading these various music scenes, or whether it's all kinds of different situations, racial, economic, environmental, all these different challenges that we face in the world. Um, and yeah, trying to navigate them as best as we can.
Mhm.
Um, it seems like you and your community and your generation have been working really hard at trying to do that as gracefully as possible and
Yeah,
trying to
as
share that.
gracefully as possible, and often uh, as I was about to say a bad word, but as messed up as we can do it. We make mistakes
Mm,
because we don't know. Just because you decide that you don't want to be on the side of the enslaver doesn't necessarily mean that your actions are always going to be not on the side of the enslaver.
mm,
So that's part of the awareness too. And that's what's so beautiful about music. See, we can talk about music theory, right? But the proof of the pudding is on the bandstand when the drummer hits what you're going to do and what sound is going to come out and what are you going to do with those sounds? And
mm,
the horn and the music are relentless. They're absolutely relentless. They will beat you up. They will spit you out. They will also provide you with beauty if you figure out how to not to resolve the tensions, but to embrace the tension. Because
mm,
I argue, this is just me now, this is my philosophic core, having grown up the grandson of a Baptist preacher, but there's a philosophical core for me that's a little different from the Black Southern Christian.
mm,
Uh, we're all in this. We're all in this, and we all have to. What the music provides is a way of expressing what it means to be human, and that expression may be all that we have. whether it's musical expression or dance expression or written expression or expression of being a successful businessman. That's a bit of a stretch, but I guess it can be done. I'm sure it can be done. Humans do stuff. And the question is how much of the stuff that we do is based on a love of humanity as opposed to a love of money or a love of physical success. Those are really the issues. The music and trying to make it in the music world puts you right, unless you're completely blind, puts you right in the middle of that conversation. Because the longer I play, the less money I make. It just works out like that. Because I've made some choices about what I'm going to do with my music and where I'm going to do my music and with whom I'm going to do my music and what's the nature of the music that I'm going to do. You make those choices and you make them and you live by them. That doesn't mean that I think it's groovy to be poor. I don't think it's groovy to be poor. If I would stand up, you'd see that I like to eat. I desire a comfortable, physically comfortable life. I'm not willing, though, to enslave you just so I can have a comfortable life. Because, as it turns out, we can both have comfortable lives without me enslaving you or the other way around. Just as on the music stand, as a trombone player, working, say, with a vocalist, sure, I have the capability, even if she's got a mic, I can play louder than she can. Why would I play louder than she can if what we're trying to do is make a sound that blends the trombone and the vocals? So what is it I'm trying to do? Am I trying to show that I can be the loudest trombone player there is, or am I trying to make an ensemble? The ensembles are going to be made up of individuals. This is the thing that the folks in the West, I think, often get wrong. You don't have to give up your individuality in order to make a group thing. In fact, it's the other way around. You got to be a strong individual in order to be a participant in the group consciousness, the group in the collective sound. Music makes that very clear. I shouldn't disappear as a trombone player, but I also shouldn't, blast out the singer. I mean, it is possible to blend. It is possible to make a unit out of the collective. And unit doesn't mean everybody's going in the same direction. That's what I love about so-called free music. You don't have to, you don't have to play the same way each time. You don't have to follow the changes all the time. You can even play without changes. Oh, duh. Or you can choose to play changes. You're going to choose to play changes, play the shit out of the changes. don't mess around. But that doesn't mean that that's the only thing that's possible. That's my point. It's not the only thing that's possible. And everything that's possible is got a timestamp on it. Part of life is death. You can't have life without death. Everybody who's watching this eats something. And whatever they eat, they had to kill something to eat it, whether it was a cow or a kale bunch. Either way, there was something that was alive and then you killed it. So the nutrients could go into your body. That's part of life. Now you can choose, I don't want to eat, in order to eat, I got to kill those sheep. Okay, then be a vegetarian. I got no problem with that. But let's not pretend that being a vegetarian means you don't kill living things. If by killing you mean there they were growing and now they're not growing. In fact, well, they're growing, but they're growing in your stomach. Okay, that's life. That's what life is. There is not life without death. There is a cycle. We're in the cycle. Sun Ra said there is no time. Some people thought Sun Ra was crazy. And Sun Ra was crazy sometimes. Sometimes Sun Ra wasn't crazy. And sometimes Sun Ra was bullshitting, and sometimes he wasn't. And sometimes his bullshit was when he was being serious. I mean, it's human. And better you should just listen to Sun Ra rather than trying to determine what he is or was or is, being that he's Sun Ra, I'm sure he's around. So, you listen rather than try to figure it out. You participate. You give your energy to the group so that the group sounds better. You give your energy to the group so that your neighborhood is better. You give your energy to the group so that your family is better. Even when your family members do stuff that you don't like, even if a family member takes on an identity that you don't like, if that identity is not about hurting people, then why would you oppose it? It's just not the identity that you chose, but that person did. So there are all these choices. I said earlier, and you picked up on it, the notion of tension. I think it's more about choices than tension. There are all these choices available, and you always have a choice. You always have a choice. In making music, you always have a choice. One of your choices when you make music is silence. That's a very important choice. Knowing when to shut the hell up and let somebody else speak, or let somebody else play, or let somebody else sing. These are choices. And once you make your choice, that leads to 10 other choices. Mm-hmm. And each one of those 10 other choices leads, so you see what's going to happen. You're going to have all these choices. So maybe life, the whole universe, is nothing but a series of past choices that have set up all these future possibilities. Maybe that's all there is. So Ra says there's no time. Ra said we invented time. Yeah. Humans invented time. So, but I'm not late to my gig because there's no
time. I do want to keep an eye on the time because I know you said that you need to leave somewhat soon, and I want to honor that.
Yeah, in about 5 minutes I do have to.
Okay. Yeah. With 5 minutes left for the $1 million question, and if I truly had $1 million, I'd love to give it to you. But
thank you.
How do you see the trajectory of music in the future? What do you see coming up from young folks, and what do you imagine it happening in the future?
I imagine 2 things. One of them is that nothing will change, and the other is that everything will change. And that sounds like, pedantic bullshit. And it may be. And it also isn't. What will not change, even as technology changes, there's still humans involved with the technology. That's what doesn't change. If we're talking about music, then ultimately it's about humans. So that won't change. What will change is how humans make music. And some of that, we kind of know, and a lot of it we don't know. I mean, there's stuff that I do now that 15 years ago, I wouldn't even conceive of. I read a lot of science fiction, so Zoom isn't new to me. But I didn't do it until, I've been doing Zoom or trying to do Zoom for no more than a year, because that's where the classes are. So I figure out how to Zoom. Okay. 5 years ago, I never would have had any notion that I would make decisions about teaching based on how I interacted with the screen. Now, I use the screen to do research, I use the screen, but not as the mode of teaching. So technologies change, and technologies change faster than human organizations change. And human organizations do change in response to the changes in technology. It's just that there's a lag. And very often there's tension, right? Because the technological change has happened, and all us old heads don't understand it yet, right? So I still have friends who have flip phones. There you go.
Me too.
Yeah, right. They're gonna keep their flip phones. And I got my iPhone, but I'm pissed at it because Apple was always trying to make me get a new one. I'm
Mm-hmm.
perfectly happy with my 7. I don't need a 12,
Mm-hmm.
but the 7's I'm going to have to go get a 12 because it's going to collapse on me. And that's a problem because so much of my life depends on me being able to quickly pick up my iPhone and do some stuff that 20 years ago I never even thought of doing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's so true with music. There was a statement that Herbie Hancock made about Stevie Wonder, I think is apropos. Herbie and Stevie they had a thing where, particularly once they became celebrities, people would make new keyboards and stuff and send it to them. You and I have to go rob banks to buy the new stuff. But people would just send it to Stevie and to Herbie. And as soon as Herbie got something, he was on the phone. Guess what I got? Mine can go. Oh, okay. And he'd go get another. So they had this thing about who's got the nicest toys. Herbie though said, unlike, this is a paraphrase, it's not the direct quote, but Herbie said, unlike a lot of folks, the thing he loved about Stevie with the new technology is that Stevie plays the technology. The technology doesn't play him. And Stevie plays his horn. The horn doesn't play him. Stevie plays whatever keyboard he's using. It doesn't play him. And that's important. And particularly now, that's important. From my point of view now, that's important because there's so much that these machines can do. Much of which I don't understand, but there's so much of this that these machines can do. But there's a tendency to let the machine make your musical choices. And that's a dead end. Because as Rahsaan Roland Kirk once said, way long time ago, he was refusing to go electronic, even though he did go electronic. Rahsaan said, man, the trouble with going electronic. Someone will pull the plug on you right in the middle of your solo. So there's that. And there's the reality that this is the environment that we have.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you're going to stop making music, you got to figure out how to deal with this environment.
Sure.
So I hope all of your viewers someone out there will have the money and the desire. I want a carbon fiber tuba. Because my tuba, I'm 75 years old and it's too heavy. I love it, but it's too heavy to pull around. I want a carbon fiber tuba. I don't know how to make a carbon fiber tuba. I know that there aren't many being made. I want a carbon fiber tuba. What can I say? It'll be light, it'll resonate, it'll be pretty. I want a carbon fiber tuba. Am I going to get one? I don't know. Probably not. But then maybe I will. You never know.
Yeah. I like your future. I hope that your futures come to fruition. I hope there are many carbon fiber tubas for you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much. Listen, I hope I haven't bored you, but like I said, once you get me talking, you're going to get me talking.
I'm immensely grateful for your time. I'm really, really happy that you were able to meet me and talk for a bit. And wow, I knew you were very smart. I knew you were a learned person. I knew you were a professor, but I didn't know how heavy this was going to be. And this was,
oh, you're calling me fat, huh? Oh, now you're calling me fat. What a guy. Oh, come on. I give the guy an hour and he calls me fat. What is that? What is that?
Oh, man.
I couldn't use this. Look, you throw a ball right across the plate. I got this one. I got to swing at it. I'm sorry.
Oh, man. Amazing.
I really do.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Bill. And I guess really quickly, are you able to offer any dates? Do you have any performances coming up?
Oh, yeah, Makanda Project. That's pretty much what I'm doing. Oh, no, I'm sorry. There are a couple of things. I wanted to show you this. Can you see it? Yeah.
Kind of.
Is it backwards? No, it's not backwards.
Can you put it closer to the screen again? William Parker.
William Parker.
Conversations 3.
Yeah, William Parker we had a collective band in New York, in Brooklyn, called MEONY, Meony, Music Ensemble in New York. We had two bassists, and one of the bassists was William Parker. And he was writing poems then, and he's writing poems now. William surprised me, he really did, with this. This is a collection of conversations that he's published. He goes around and interviews, just like you're interviewing. He goes around and interviews some of his colleagues, known and unknown, and transcribes it and puts it in a book. So I'm fortunate I got in. There are three of these now. He'll keep making them as long as he lives, because he's William Parker. And I'm in Conversations 3, so I'm kind of proud of that. Makanda Project has got, let's see, we've got something. I'm going to have to look at my phone. See? Hope it still works. Look at my i7. And it says that Makanda Project will be performing on the 10th of July. No, the 17th of July at the First Church in Roxbury, 10 Putnam Street. That's our July hit with that. In August, we have one. I don't know the exact date, but there's a Makanda Project. Oh, watch this. I'll show you how hip I am. Down. Makanda Project has a website. Oh, so check out the website, and I'll tell you all the dates coming up. And there's this wonderful thing coming up. We did a recording project. This is something that Kevin Harris, pianist, Mark Redmond, who runs the Mandorla series. We got a grant to honor the music of Arnie Cheatham, great saxophonist Arnie Cheatham. You saw Arnie. Arnie was still playing with the band when you were there that day. Arnie's been very ill, but he came out the other day when we did something special at the church. Arnie came out and played some alto saxophone, which was beautiful. Anyway, we did this recording project. Kevin assembled a 9-piece group, and we did a recording project of arrangements that Kevin and Arnie did of Arnie's music, some of Arnie's music. And we're going to do a CD release thing in August. And I strongly recommend that, because the music's beautiful and the players are great. And that's happening in August. Go to the website of the Mandorla music series. That'll tell you exactly the date for that. I'm bringing my group, part of the Signifying Natives Project, to River School out in Weston, November the 6th.
The 6th of August?
No, November, the 6th of November.
Okay, 6th of November.
Yeah, that's way ahead in the future. And like I said, every remaining month, July, August, and September, there will be a Makanda Project hit at the church. Always around the middle of the month, 15th, 16th, maybe the 20th. That's about it that I can think of right now. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks for sharing. Appreciate it.
Thank you for asking.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll finally let you go. Get to your gig.
Yep. I got to tell you about. Oh, that's a gig. We do it every Thursday. It's called BLT, which you would call a band that plays at a farmer's market. It's the Bill Lowe Trio. We're playing at the Milk Farm. It's a great gig. It's just a trio: piano, bass, and me. And it's wonderful. I mean, it's just a wonderful thing. I hope it doesn't rain. You're out there for a couple hours playing standards. Just play standards. And the people love it. The little kids come and dance, man. I'm playing Stella by Starlight, and a little 5-year-old is out there cutting the rug while his mama is buying tomatoes at the
beautiful
market. So that's all part of. That's what I mean about what do you do with your music. That's a thing. So that's what I got to get to. Luckily, it's just across the street because I live near the Milton Farmers Market. All right.
Okay. Well, I'll see you next time. Hope you have a great gig, and see you later.
All right. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah. Thanks.
Take care, man.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening. Comments, questions, send me an email at bossbonespodcast@gmail.com. That's BOSBONES podcast@gmail.com. Or follow me on Instagram, YouTube, or Spotify. You can follow Professor Bill Lowe on Facebook at facebook.com/bill.lowe, LOWE.9849. Trombone icon by Gregory Montini from thenounproject.com. Special thanks to Celine and Jeffrey. The Boss Bones theme was written and recorded by yours truly, Michael Prentke. Again, please follow at Boss Bones on Instagram, YouTube, and Spotify, or visit at michaelprentke.com/bossbones. Thanks for listening. See you next time.